Hello and welcome to The World This Week with me, Jonathan Steele. The war in Syria continues to rage on with no respite for the people of the country. Reports of over 1,000 people killed in an alleged chemical weapon attack are the latest atrocity in a war which has prompted a mass exodus from the country. Over the last few years, a refugee crisis has been developing, which has now reached epic proportions as millions flee Syria to escape the violence. Since last Thursday alone, at least 35,000 Syrian Kurds have fled into Iraqi Kurdistan, which has coincided with fighting between opposition forces and Kurds in the northeast of Syria. Nazli Tazi has more.
As the civil war approaches nearly 3 years, the growing humanitarian crisis in Syria is stoking fears of prolonged insurrection in the region. While clashes between Kurdish fighters and al-Nusra Front intensify, an estimated 30,000 Syrian Kurds have flooded into the semi-autonomous Iraqi Kurdistan region, where an emergency response by Save the Children has been launched.
Since 15th of August, the Kurdistan regional government has opened the border for refugees coming from Syria. The first day, more than 7,000 people streamed to the border.
The ongoing exodus of Syrian refugees is a reflection of the sheer scale of the crisis that continues to persist as a result of the exploitation of sectarian identities. As a response to the ongoing displacement crisis, aid agencies have joined forces with the Iraqi Kurdistan government to secure effective handling of the largest emergency appeal in the history of the United Nations.
We ask the international community represented by the Security Council to take up its responsibility toward the Syrian people. And specifically, we ask 3 specific points, the first of which to find mechanism to force the Syrian regime to accept the Geneva Communique and to make that commitment clear. A regime that continues to kill civilians, destroy cities, use heavy weaponry, including weapons of mass destruction, does not seem to be, in fact, committed to not only the spirit but the letter of the Geneva Communique.
The exodus, however, says UNHCR spokesman Dan McNaughton, is the largest one since the conflict began in March 2011 and displays no signs of slowing down.
The situation in Syria is bad. Rockets were launched. There is a bread, electricity crisis. The situation is bad.
Up until recently, the Iraqi border to Syria had been closed, but following Mahmoud Barzani's pledge to protect Syrian Kurds fighting a war within a war, the tide appears to be changing. The exodus, however, says UNHCR spokesperson Dan McNaughton, is the largest one since the conflict began in March 2011 and displays no signs of slowing down.
Thousands of Syrian refugees have poured into Kurdistan recently and they headed to Arbil. Therefore, this camp was set up in coordination with the government offices in Arbil city, Peshmerga and the Servani, and also UN organisations.
Although an estimated 1.5 million have escaped the Syrian regime's offensives, their plight fails to display the needs of Syria's 2.5 million internally displaced people facing destitution.
There was security in Syria before, but there has been no security over the past 2 or 3 years.
The question of whether the influx could destabilise the wider region and give rise to Kurdish nationalism remains unanswered. What is certain is that no one can predetermine what the future holds. Nazli Tazi, Islam Channel.
Well, joining me in the studio to discuss these issues are Mohammed Najjar, the founder of the organisation Save Syria, Dr. Alan Shemo, a spokesperson for the Syrian party, the Kurdish Democratic Union Party, and from Jordan by Skype we have Rasmus Eggendahl, a representative from World Food Programme. Let me ask you first of all, Mr. Eggendahl, you're right there on the front line in Jordan. I mean, how much more can Jordan take of this refugee influx? Has it got the resources to deal with it if it goes on increasing?
Well, it is evident to everyone, I believe, that this is a a disaster which is beyond anybody's imagination, and clearly the countries surrounding Syria are bearing the brunt of the cost for hosting and providing assistance to these refugees. Jordan, Lebanon, Turkey, and Iraq as well are in many communities at capacity in terms of being able to deal with this, and obviously we are very concerned about the ability of them to continue supporting an ever increasing number of refugees. We do our best to provide assistance to all of them that are coming, as well as populations within Syria. We are spending in WFP $30 million every week to provide life-saving assistance to people inside Syria and in the region. We're reaching at the moment approximately over 4 million people.
And what percentage of the need is that? I mean, how many of the people in need are you actually reaching, percentage terms?
That's a good question. I think it is very hard, in effect, to accurately ascertain the extent of this disaster. We are certainly, there are areas inside Syria where we are unable, because of the security, because of the problems related to the ongoing conflict, where we're unable to deliver assistance. Hazake, where the Kurdish population are coming from, is one of those areas where over the past 3 months, because of access issues, we have had very difficult time to deliver the necessary assistance.
Well, Alan Shemo here in London in the studio. This huge exodus of Kurds, 35,000 in the last few days, why has it happened suddenly just like this, just now?
Yeah, I think is the main reason for this fleeing the Kurdish region in northern Syria to Iraqi Kurdistan is the attack and massacring of the Kurdish people in northern Syria, in the Kurdish area, in the Kurdish region in Syria, by the jihadist Jabhat al-Nusra and Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. They have opened since months now. They have an open war on the Kurdish civilian in the area, and they have to open it to war because they wanted to have established as Islamic State, and they forgot to fight the regime, the brutal regime, the Assad regime, and the Kurdish people are civilian people, peaceful people. They are Muslim, and they don't want to have anything with Jabhat al-Nusra and with this Islamic State of Iraq and Syria to do, and they're attacking them because they will get in border, they're expanding their mini-state, Islamic State from Raqqa and Deir ez-Zor, and they will take over the Kurdish area. The Kurdish area have been peacefully and they're democratically managing themselves, and they're governing themselves, and this attack has contributed to the people, civilian, because this massacre happened in Rif Aleppo and closer surrounding the province of Aleppo. About 400 people have been hostage. Many two towns of Tel Aran and Tel Hasl have been massacred, and there are about 40,000 people have been cut off in name of Islam and in name of the religion in that people, and the people has to flee.
So
and
these people are fleeing from the jihadis, not from the Syrian government forces?
Of course, from the jihadis, because the Syrian government is not there. The Kurdish area have been controlled and run by the Kurds themselves, and they are not attacking, they're defending themselves. The people have been fleeing, and this two towns, Tel Aran and Tel Hasl, which is belonging 20 miles to Aleppo, have been fleeing now to Kurdistan, Iraq, and talking about or telling about this atrocities and massacres happening to there. And one family, mom telling the TV in Rudau, they saying she saw in her front of her eyes that 4 of her children have been beheaded and been in name of Islam, because they're saying they call them you Kurds, not Muslim.
Well, let me bring in Dr. Mohammed Sajja. I said he was in the studio. Dr. Mohammed Najjar, you are a medical doctor speaking to us by telephone. Which areas are you particularly working in? Are you working in the camps outside the country or trying to do cross-border assistance?
Well, actually, I have been to the northern part of Syria, and I have been to quite a few camps, especially inside the northern part of Syria. Basically, the situation is quite bad, is miserable. The people there are in need of really basic things to stay alive. We have seen the atrocities that carried out yesterday by the Syrian regime against our people in the suburbs of Damascus. I have been in contact with quite a few people who did beg for some medication to save their lives. They have talked about 1,600 people that have been reported dead already by the gas, very likely to be the sarin gas, nerve gas. And one of the guys in the area has been talking about 5,000 people to have been affected, and they are between life and death. Some of them are in coma, and some of them are on the way to die. So the situation is really, really bad, and they need medicine, they need food. One of them told me that they haven't seen bread for the last two months.
Well, let me come back to Rasmus Eggendahl in the World Food Programme. Have you been able to get any food at all to these outer suburbs of Damascus, which are in opposition hands and where these latest attacks and so on have been going on? I don't mean, have you been able to get in anything in the last 24 hours? I mean, but in this last few months when this has been building up.
Yeah, we are distributing within Syria. Last month we managed to distribute food to approximately 3 million people. We are delivering in all areas where we can have access, both government and non-government controlled areas. We're having significant deliveries to areas, both those that are held by the opposition and that are controlled by government. We don't necessarily distinguish between one or the other. We access where we can, irrespective of whether it is a government or non-government controlled area. It is not a distinction that is important for us. It is important for us to meet the humanitarian needs wherever they are. We're obviously extremely concerned about the areas where we do not have access, and we continue to advocate with all parties that are involved in the conflict for unhindered access for our relief convoys and our food distribution.
I mean, in many of these disasters and conflicts, aid gets diverted, which is meant to go to civilians and is taken by armed groups or by the government for its own purposes. I mean, is that something that is happening in the Syrian crisis as well?
Well, it is. It has happened. Fortunately, it has not happened to a large extent. And whenever it happens, we follow up. We have had food and trucks seized by various armed groups, but in about 50% of the cases we've managed to recover both the food and the trucks and obviously the drivers that have been detained. So it's certainly something that is happening. We are concerned that it is happening on an increasing basis, but we are also having a much larger operation. We were distributing food to 1.5 million people at the beginning of the year. We're doing 3 million people now, and in a few months we will have increased to 4 million people. So we have a larger footprint. It is of concern, obviously, that there are many groups that appear to be outside any real control either by the government or by the opposition forces, and it is difficult for us to negotiate because you often don't know who you're dealing with and where you can call. So that is a concern for us. We have to be responsible for our staff and as well those private companies that are trucking our food to the locations.
Alan Shimmer here in London in the studio. Let me come back to this issue of the chemical attacks. We heard Mohammed Najjar saying outright that it was done by the Syrian government. I mean, the Kurdish people, unfortunately, have been the victims of the most terrible attack a quarter of a century ago in Iraq, of course, of chemical gas, which killed something like 5,000 people in an hour or two. Do you have any sense as to whether it was the government or the opposition that did this?
Of course, this is a brutal regime, the dictator regime, the inhuman massacres are happening to it, as the same as mentioned in Halabja, 1988, and now in Ghouta, in surrounding Damascus. Is likely that it's a brutal regime and is playing with this last card and showing to the people, I mean, to the world, to the international community, that is that brutal, that inhuman regime can kill their own people just to verify their dictatorship and their brutality. They're likely is the regime using in this massacres against the civilian people. And should be, and I think is the international community now have seen the Red Cross, the red line have been crossed by this brutal regime, or whoever committed this crime should be international community intervention to save the people, the civilian people in Syria.
Let me come back to you, Mohammed Najjar. On the Kurdish question, you mentioned the chemical thing already at the beginning, but what about the Kurdish issue and what we've just heard some moments ago from Alan Shimmer, that it is Jabhat al-Nusra, one of the opposition groups, that is causing these massacres of Kurds? I mean, isn't that showing that the opposition is extremely divided and is really sort of diverting its attention from the real struggle, which is against the government?
Well, I am really sorry to hear that, and it's quite sad actually to know that Islamists are fighting our brothers in the northern eastern part of Syria, the Kurdish brothers, who we did try on several occasions to get into a sort of agreement with. But unfortunately, some factions of the Kurdish, community in that area, and particularly the PKK and DYP or DYG, don't know the name quite properly. They have been siding with the Syrian regime against their own people and against their brothers in that area, the Arabs and the Kurds. And I know for a fact that some of the Kurdish brothers are fighting alongside the Free Syrian Army. They have their own, groups, and they are their own areas that have been controlled by them. But unfortunately, some of the factions of the Kurdish brothers, such as the PKK, have been given a promise by the Syrian regime that they will have their own state or they will be joining the Kurdistan that has been, for years in northern Iraq now. And I was reading some reports about pre-plans for thousands of the Kurds to cross over to Kurdistan to give the excuse or the pretext for the Kurdish government in Kurdistan to send its fighters to the areas in the northeast of Syria. This is the situation. This is what I understand. I know that not all of the Kurds want to separate, want their own state, or to join the Kurdistan that covers actually northern Iraq, southeastern Turkey, and northeastern parts of Syria.
Well, can we, before you go on, thank you, I think the point is clear. Let me just get Alan Shimmer to comment on that. Is that your understanding that the Syrian government has offered secessional autonomy to the Kurdish regions if they support the army against the Free Syrian Army?
It never happened. I mean, the Kurds never happened or sided to the Syrian regime. They have been fighting against this regime since 2004. And their uprising in Kamishli, what happened? This uprising in the Kurdish area is from 2004 up to now is against this brutal regime. Meanwhile, Dr. Najjar talking about there was non-support of the Kurdish uprising in 2004, and they will oppressed. The massacre was happening in Qamishli, and the Kurdish rebellion will not be repressed. And the regime is brutal. The Kurdish people have been against this regime and fighting this regime. And Mr. Najjar talking about the PKK, the PKK not in Syria. There are none have been proven in PKK in Syria. And the PKK is in northern Kurdistan, and it is another part of Kurdistan geographically and politically.
No, but the PYD
is a Syrian political party, and it has non-armed group in Syria. PYD declared 100 times clearly and is open. It is the Kurdish forces. YPG now is controlling the Kurdish area, which is belonging to the Supreme Kurdish Council, not to the PYD, as the gentleman mentioning. The Kurds have been protecting themselves, defending themselves, but this massacre happening by the opposition, supported by the opposition, and the general of military council in Aleppo, Abdel Jabbar al-Agheiti, stating clearly, and the gentleman saying, oh, I just heard about it, stating clearly, we have to sweep off all the Kurds from Syria and expel them from Syria.
So, and who is this gentleman who's saying that?
Abdel Jabbar al-Agheiti is an individual.
Part of the,
he is a military council in Aleppo.
Of the opposition, of the Free Syrian Army.
Of the Syrian army. And he is stating clearly, since 1 month, and he make it declared and attacked the Kurdish civilian in Tel Hassel and Tel Aran near the Aleppo, and saying we fighting PKK. And Tel Aran and Tel Hassel is non-PKK. They are Syrian Kurd. They're living there for thousands a year.
Let me come back to you, Mr. Egendahl, just finally to finish it off. I'm afraid we've only got a couple of minutes. Are you able to get food to these people, the Kurds who've just fled into northern Iraq, or is that beyond your area of operations at the moment?
No, we are. I mean, even before this happened, we were providing food assistance to approximately 60,000 Kurdish Syrian refugees in camps in Iraq. We are using stocks that we have available in Iraq, in the Kurdish part of the country, to feed these additional people. We are moving about 37,000 family rations, which will last the family for about 1 month, and they will, in order to bolster our supplies there, and they will start arriving early next week. So we are pulling all stops to make sure that we have the necessary food. We will move part of the food with aircraft through airlifts over the weekend to make sure that people there have the sufficient food to feed their families. I must say that the government, the regional government, has done an extraordinary job in terms of providing the immediate assistance, shelter, water, and other necessities for the refugees that came across the border. So I think they deserve a lot of praise for the way they have responded to this crisis.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that. Obviously, it's an issue that we're going to be discussing many times again in the future, because there seems no end to this terrible tragedy in sight. But thank you very much for joining us, Rasmus Egendahl and Mohammed Najjar, and here in the studio, Alan Shemo. And thank you for watching. When we come back, we're going to be talking about the crisis in Somalia and the fact that the big organization that runs practically the whole health system in the country, Médecins Sans Frontières, is now pulling out. Stay with us.